Dual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Supernatural, metaphysical, paranormal. You know, all those things you've been wondering about? Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you've got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey Radio Show. This is the She-Squatchers, and I'm Jen Cruz, your host. I've got my fellow teammates on the line. I've got Jenna Grover.
Well, hello.
And Tammy Trikel.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, we have a super special guest for you tonight. We've got Dan Nedrelo joining us, and he's here to talk with us about Bigfoot, and he knows about Dogman, everybody. I know everybody's going to be excited about that because we've been having so many questions about that lately in our chat room. So welcome, Dan, to the show. Thank you for coming.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
Yay. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and where are you from?
Sure. Wisconsin, southwestern Wisconsin, driftless area, trout stream country, river bluffs. And when I was little, the biggest thing that happened for me was I got into reptiles. So I'm a herpetologist. I've worked for numerous organizations, including the Department of Natural Resources, National Wildlife Federation, taking on contracts, doing environmental surveys, assessments, Department of the Army, Trout Unlimited, Nature Conservancy, and private enterprise like Highway Department, etc. Got into Sasquatch early, 5th grade. I'm an old guy, so it was 1967 actually when the Patty film came out, and I happened to be in 5th grade, and coincidentally our 5th grade teacher used the term abominable snowman. Lit me up like a spark. I had to find out more. One thing led to another. I was convinced I was going to Asia, going to pull an Adam Davies, and no, didn't have to. The Sasquatch Patty stuff started showing up, and I'm thinking maybe I don't have to go out of country. One thing led to another. I never got to talk to adults about the subject, and every time I brought it up, I was either laughed at or looked down upon. It took me till I was probably 19 before I ran into another similar-aged person who had seen footprints, and that was during my speech class in college. Going on through my career, I never ran into much for field sign or anything, but I did stay with the literature. I started hunting literature down back in the day with Ivan T. Sanderson, and then went on to John Green and numerous other books and magazines, and finally, in 2000, my mother passed. My sister made a bet with me. I ended up in the BFRO for 4 years and got to work with some of the guys that wrote the books that interested me in the first place. And so then I went independent after 4 years of that, and been working in groups and traveling to different locations and coordinating with as many witnesses as I can, because this is something that just doesn't quit. There you go.
Awesome. So it's the never-ending, to be continued, more questions.
Oh,
to be
absolutely.
answered.
One answer brings like 13 more questions. So off you go.
That's how it is for me too. Yep, absolutely. So have you had a Bigfoot or Dogman experience?
I initially didn't think there could possibly be such a thing as an upright canine. And the anecdotal information is incredibly strong. Secondary evidence is, I'm still mulling around with that, but it looks like it's out there. And as far as the experiences I've had, as far as I know, they've all been Sasquatch related. I'm watching a private property now that this is the 12th year, and we've had vocalizations there, nest beds there, and some manipulated branches, trees, I haven't come across a carcass kill, but we did have one cow that a friend of mine who owns property close by had, and she had a broken neck, and we're still trying to figure out how that happened. So that could very well be an example of one of the predator or one of the carcass kills. I'm actually in exchange right now with some. Or something. We've either got a man who acts like a Sasquatch on the property, or we've got Sasquatches. And basically what's happening is I'm getting rocks brought up from the creek and laid on a rock bed. The private property owner is not real healthy at this point. She's hardly outside. So some of the things that are going on, that have been going on there, that are Sasquatch related, nobody knows that we're doing what we're doing there as far as watching. And I do have a game cam shot that I can't share here, but I will share in the future. And it is simply a silhouette, no neck, head and shoulders. Guy looks like a Samoan on a surfboard with the wind in his hair, and he's like bent over looking down at the camera, which is placed at 5 feet 2 inches off the ground. And we've got that camera up again in a different part of the property, and I'll be looking to, we get the wood knocks, we get the whoops once in a while. I'll give you an example. It was 2010, and I'm sitting on the property hoping for something. And I'll explain also the story as to how I got there. But I'm sitting there, and it's dogs and coyotes up on the hill, and kind of an interaction with the canines. And all of a sudden I get this across the valley, and it's deep and it's long and almost sounds human, but it's got that low bass. And I'm kind of like, yes, I think, and I had it recorded, sent it on to a couple of friends of mine that live in the Rockies. They immediately got a hold of me back, called back and said, congratulations, Daniel, you hit. They do that here. And one thing led to another. I have had some tracks. We had some imprints recently, about 8 inches. We do get calls from the, shall we say, the area around the house up into the woods. But I haven't had a visual yet. I'm looking for a visual. As far as what I'm doing out of state, I'm working with Shane Carpenter and Randy Harrington. And we have 4 individuals on that property. We have 18, the big male's maybe not all that big, but he's probably pushing 16 inches. We have to check with Randy or Shane on that. I'll be going back in the field this year. And that male is nervous, doesn't apparently like us too much. Then we have a younger one or a female. And I think those guys think it's a female. And she's got a smaller foot, but still in that 13 area, maybe 14 by now. And then 2 younger ones. And Shane has walked up on one of those within 7 feet away. So those are Sasquatches. And they've come into camp. We've got recordings of them where they started at one end of the table and went right down the line. And it was real interesting because the first night that I was there, 2019, I got to see one through infrared. And it was 100 feet out, so the detail wasn't there, but the behavioral head bobbing and looking matched what we'd expect and what they'd experienced earlier. And so when Shane walked up on it, there wasn't any question. And we've got footprints from all 4 of them. So it's good stuff. And there'll be more work on that. And I believe he's got, initially the first installment of information on that is called Into the 400, and that's off Amazon. And anybody can look at that. As far as back at the base that I'm working at, I was on a rattlesnake call. I'm a herpetologist, so I like rattlesnakes and crocodiles and all that stuff. I've been fortunate enough to hit 44 states. I've been to Australia, Tasmania, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Hispaniola, which is Haiti and Dominican Republic, and then some Canada, and I was a mile away from Mexico 3 weeks ago. So long story short, this woman had closed the house down in the basement. She closed the door. And this was like 30 some years ago. And she's laying in bed. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, which is like the golden hour, boom, she gets hit with a skull splitting scream that freaks her out so much she feels paralyzed in her bed. She sits there for 5 minutes, and it's still going on, right outside the door, window, etc. And her concern is it's coming through, but it didn't. And she went into the kitchen, and it was still just absolutely loud. She had 2 dogs, and they were just huddled together at the table for the next 10 minutes, watching rodents come up from the basement, coming through the cracks in the walls, and having problems with orientation as they worked themselves across the floor. So she thought rats and mice. I'm thinking, well, that usually it's rats and younger rats, but it doesn't matter because they were not walking the way we'd expect to see them. So it seemed to be as though the vocalization may well have affected them. So that really was a big alert to me, and that's how I focused on her property. So now it gets better, and I'll zoom this quick because I know you're ready for another question. But a year after I got the cool vocal, my cousins and I were out doing wood knock surveys, and we got a response of 2 Ohio scream calls. And it was funny because I had the parabolic and the earphones on, and my cousins didn't. But my young son of my cousin came down the hill after these 2 calls, and and did you hear him? And I'm like, I don't know, what'd you hear? Because I was like, did I just manifest this sound, or was it really? But after his reaction, I knew that, yeah, we hit, and we were high-fiving, and his father thought we were a little bit nuts. And later on in the night, we got some more wood knocks, and he was listening with a parabolic and heard 2 individuals walking toward the vehicle, which kind of, well, it was time to go to the bathroom and maybe get some sleep. So we left, unfortunately. But that was 6 miles south of the main location. So that's a little bit of what's going on.
I was curious about the rodents coming up out of the ground. Do you think that maybe they were using that to bring food out for easy catching?
Isn't that an interesting thought? I haven't seen it in the literature really, but the vocalizations that they have with the low bass, and we've seen this with tigers and some other animals, it may well be that they can stun their prey with it and just literally make catch much easier. So yeah, possible. Numerous people talk about how they get hit with the vocal, and it literally, you can feel it go right through you. And I haven't had that yet. I'm hoping maybe that'll happen in Michigan. And by the way, Chad Datama says hi, and I'll be meeting some of those fellas tonight, or not tonight, but in the near future as well. So excited about that.
Well, please greet them all from us. We had the pleasure of going on expedition with them last summer up in the UP of Michigan. So that was a good time. If they're taking you back up to that area, it's definitely a good time.
Okay, good. Well, I haven't got the details on exactly where we're going, but I'm sure it'll be a nice adventure. So looking forward to that.
Very awesome.
I did have one come up behind me, or it appears to have been that, and sneeze behind me. And I put the recorder on, tried to pick it up, sat 45 minutes, total silence, absolutely nothing. And my initial reaction was, it's got to be the landowner. Nope, house is all shut down. Total dark, total black night. Coyotes had just run through. So some feel there's a correlation between coyotes and them, and certainly a lot of recordings come off that way. So was he running with them? Was it really the target species? I can't say because I didn't see it, but I was waiting for it to clear its throat, or growl a little bit, or cough, or shift weight in position. Nothing. Total silence. So I just said, see ya, thank you very much, and let's do it again.
That's interesting. I know that there's others who have talked about this connection between Bigfoot and coyotes.
Yes.
Do you think that there's a connection? Do you think they hunt together, or what do you think about that?
Oh, I think, first of all, yes, I would definitely agree there's a connection. Now, what that connection is certainly unverified, but certain people have seen tracks and things like that that suggest things. In my view, maybe they're like us in that we all have different ways and preferences of doing things. So it might be some like working with them, others kill them as competition, depending upon the environmental conditions. Maybe others eat them. Who knows? We got a lot to learn.
Very much so. Very much so. I've already had a question in the chat room.
Cool.
They're asking, does Dogman have a smell to him?
That's a good question. I've read that some do. I don't know for all I can say is that there are plenty of Sasquatch reports that don't have an accompanying odor. And I don't know enough about Dogman, if that's what it is, to say that that's the case. And plus, I wonder how many species are making up the Dogman reports, whether hyena, whether baboon, whether upright canines. So that is quite a, and so many people will just disregard the claims, but yet some of the claims are very incredible. So.
Very true, very true. And so what do you think the Dogman is?
I haven't got enough information or a visual, but I just wonder if a fair percentage of them are not baboons. That's one of my thinking, a dog-faced monkey, which would certainly allow for a lot of the behaviors and a lot of the physical descriptions. I have a contact who told me that she had a friend who had his vehicle destroyed in the state of New Mexico by hitting some very large dog-like animal. So that's almost like a giant hyena situation. We also have, I believe it's a Dinopithecus. Dinopithecus is a super large fossil of a baboon that was in North America. Now, how big do they get? I don't know. There's some incredible claims out there. I'd just like to see the matching footprints compared to what we have in the Sasquatch world. So we're kind of waiting for that, although it appears to be growing. So.
What was the footprint like for this, what was it called again?
Oh, the Dinopithecus?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure, but I think it was very baboon-like,
Okay.
being that's what it was. And I don't have images of baboons out right now. I guess I came into this thinking a little bit more Sasquatch than the Dogman stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I think that's a great question, and I will try to put some focus on that in the future. So I would suggest people come to the Dogman Mystery group, and perhaps we can strike up some more information and focus on some things like that.
So that's a group on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Dogman Mystery Group on Facebook, everybody. That's what he's inviting you to come check out. Another question in the chat room. Sherry is asking, could Bigfoot ever domesticate the coyotes?
That's a great question. We have numerous reports of them being seen with big cats. We just had a recent report out of Michigan where someone saw one running with a wolf. Our coyotes get big in the north, so it's possible that was a coyote. But if it was pushing 100 pounds, that'd definitely be a wolf. And if they can do that, there's no reason in the world why they can't pick up coyote pups and walk around with them, desensitize, the animal grows. There's no reason to be afraid. Similar to how I think they operate with white-tailed deer in some cases, elk, numerous other wild creatures. They've got access to just about anything they want with their incredible speed and power and stealth. So why couldn't they grab a cougar kitten or grab a coyote, etc.? It's great little mystery there.
Someone in the chat, Kat in the chat room, is saying it'd be interesting to learn that we, the smaller apish folk, domesticated the largest canines, while the largest, maybe apish folk, domesticated the not so large coyotes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I know there's some violence with coyotes. Some of the pre-internet reports where there was one great in Washington where you have the sound of what appears to be something imitating a coyote, and that coyote over here, they come together, and then there's only the one sound and then nothing. And then that was investigated, and there was a coyote smashed against a tree. So the question about the love for coyotes may be variable, I guess.
That makes sense. There's somebody in the chat room called Understanding Bigfoot, and they said that they have evidence of Bigfoot hunting with coyotes in southeast Missouri.
I wouldn't be surprised about that at all.
It seems like, to me, like that would make sense that they would hunt together.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing that's been brought up too is it possible that the Sasquatch goes out, does his predator kill, and now you've got a pack of coyotes hanging around looking to pick up what's left over behind. And something I've always thought about is how come it seems like there's so many incidences of a carcass kill that was just left fresh, and it's just not touched. And even the internal organs aren't always taken, because obviously we know about the focus on the heart and the liver. Well, something that occurred to me was, what happens to a carcass? Usually you get parasites, and usually you get maggots, and that's not very nice at all. But boy, is that ever fresh protein. So maybe there's an interesting idea there. So
Interesting. Yes, very much so. All right, girls, I'm giving you the opportunity to ask questions. No questions? Okay.
well, that makes my job easier. Thank you.
Right?
So sorry. No, I'm just really enjoying hearing you speak. I think it's so interesting. So you said, how long have you been doing this?
I started officially working with other people in 2000.
Okay.
With BFRO. And I was in the wrong place for that, because I came in very happy and comfortable with what I knew. Mm-hmm. And maybe that gets a little overbearing for people that are maybe just starting to get into certain things, because I'd read everything I could possibly find on the subject. So I was a little maybe too happy with what I knew. I'll just put it that way. But my questions were nonstop. And of course, when now you've got an opportunity to talk to somebody who claims a visual, what did that look like? What did it do? How long did you see it? What was the light level? What was the odor situation? What, all those intricacies that you have a chance to learn from, And so I was in 4 years. I gained a lot of weight, and my typing went from 35 words a minute to 105. I've got atrophication in this hand, actually, from the muscles just starting to fall apart. So I don't do that like that before, but I would be on a computer 24/7, just going nuts, and then go to the next person. And I made tons of friends in the organization. I've since turned around and come back and had a chance to renew a lot of acquaintances and work with a lot of the people that are in there now. But I'm working with virtually everybody, and we certainly can't babysit everybody, and there's a lot of competition for information and things of that nature. I'm just working with people who are interested, and those that aren't, I respect everything, because this is an energy suck, trying to get as much as you can and go as far as you can, and gas costs money, and getting away from other work costs money, etc. So big respect for people who do this in all aspects of life here.
Thank you for touching base on that. I think people think we're in this and we're making money. We are not making money.
No, not at all. No.
We have some things that we sell at events and stuff, and we're just trying to recoup some of the costs of the much money that we're spending on equipment and travel and all the other different things that we're doing. So it would be rare that we come out on top.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I love it when Bigfoot researchers share that, because there are so many people that I see online saying that they're making money doing this and that. I'm like, where? Because sign me up for that.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how many people will presume that.
Yeah.
Line your pants with money. Not happening. That'd be nice, but I'm not in it for that anyway. I'm in it to learn because I'm seriously curious about things. I have not had a good one-on-one in daylight at all, and so many have, and that's one of my goals. And I'll take extra clothes if I have to. I'm going to try to be prepared. And just real interested in the subject matter because it's just tremendously amazing to me, especially with all the variations in the phenotypes and different looks and different sizes and different behaviors. So the genetics on these guys must be just wild, just absolutely wild. So
I bet you'd love to get your hands on those, on some scientific blood and
absolutely,
different.
absolutely. I've had one of my research affiliates down in Tennessee. We had cattle there, but we had the cattle like a long distance away. They weren't anywhere near the fenced in areas. And on these fences, we would get this hair. And it came back in question, either human contaminated as usual or cattle tail. And that apparently is something that continues to come up. And I haven't done the genetic work. I'm not big on the chemistry aspects of these things yet, although that's an area that I really want to work hard on. But behavior is my gig. And then I'm also a biological illustrator, so I can do a fairly good job of reconstructing what people claim or describe. And I've worked with Alexa Evans over in Indiana and certainly Sibylla, who works with the BFRO for illustrations, and numerous other artists as well. When I was in Arizona, I was able to meet with Michael Montoya, and what a wonderful fellow, and he's doing some wonderful things with Ed Brown and other people around California and across the country. So it was just nice to see what he's up to, and of course meeting Jay Vernon again, who I'd gone to Milwaukee to work with. So I wanted to get access to the property that he had grown up on, which he gave me. And then from there, it turns out we fly into Phoenix, and that's where he's moved to. So we had a wonderful time, and we'll be working on some projects together in the future as well. So
That's awesome. That's awesome
Yeah.
that you can work together like that.
It
Did you
is.
find anything at his property?
No, I haven't got there yet, to be
Oh.
honest with you. So I had one SUV go down. I've hit 4 deer since January. So one of my vehicles got pretty well set off to the side, and that was another $1,000 to get that fixed up. So, so I'm driving my little Ford F-150, and I'm going to take that over to Michigan and drop through the other states. So, and I haven't been to West Virginia except the edge of the border. So I'm really hoping I can get in there and see some folks that I've met who've invited me. So we'll see.
Sounds like a constant adventure.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
going to ask, how much do you travel then? Are you constantly traveling?
I used to travel crazily when I was doing wildlife presentations all over the Midwest, and I've done them as far east as California, North Carolina, far west as California. And I would be hauling everything from rattlesnakes and alligators to giant snapping turtles or whatever, mainly for reptile and amphibian conservation and education, so we can allow people to feel a little more comfortable when they're in the woods and not feel like they're being chased by every serpent that has a blunt head that looks like it's a cottonmouth to them, or a rattlesnake or copperhead. So,
Oh, that's very cool that you do that.
yeah. So I've got all kinds of crazy experiences. I think I've been to Florida 18 times, and I love Texas. Haven't been there enough, but I got to meet some good people down there, and some of my online friends have invited me to stay at their homes, and I've done that, and that reaches for more incredible friendships, and so this networking thing, this is a wonderful thing. Got me here. Thank you.
That's awesome. I love it. We get invited places all the time, and it's usually like so far away. It's like, I don't know how we're going to get there.
Exactly. I'd planned the Arizona trip for like 5 years, and we finally pulled it off. We did it very ridiculously cheap, but you can't do that all the time. I did get an invite from a friend who I'm actually going to be working with in June, and we're actually going to be working with kids from broken homes and things like that. And that's going to be in northern Wisconsin. And this is going to potentially take me around the country a little bit too. So
I love
just
it.
more of that, yeah. And
Well,
I'll be in Missouri a couple times because we've got our field research that we're going to be doing and trying to work documentary at a professional level down there. So
nice. Well, on that note, we're going to go to our commercial break. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be back with Dan Nedrelo. All right, we should be clear. So mark the 2-minute mark.
well, hopefully that was okay the way
You sound fabulous.
Yes.
Well, as a guy who was terrified of speaking in front of people and ending up doing it as a career, I like to think it looks like I did a little bit of it. So, yes.
Well, you sound fabulous, so I'm
Thanks.
enjoying hearing you speak.
Appreciate it.
What is this picture behind you? Can you explain it to us a little bit? I'm
I
looking at
found
it.
something goofy on the Skype deal, and that being I've never used the Skype. I hit a button, and all of a sudden this came up, and I'm like, I like it. So then I went with it. As far as an explanation of it, no, I have zero, nothing.
Okay, I thought it was maybe a picture that you took. I was like, what's going on with that?
No. Well, it was
Okay.
funny because when Doug Hadjusek, or however his last name's pronounced, I have this solid blue wall behind me, and it's funny because he's like, Dan, you've got to do something with that background. We want you back, but you've got to do something with that background. So I just think that was hilarious. And then we have this, so I did something with the background.
Good job. Good job.
Wasn't that interesting with the rodents though? When that gal was
Yeah.
So, and she is a fighter. She's in stage 4 of heart failure right now. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to have with her, but we have activity on different edges of the property, and the neighbor is a good friend of mine. So I will have access to that valley, and we should be able to continue, hopefully looking for tracks and things. But I don't do many tracks at all. I'm getting imprints, and I'm getting a few things, but. So I'm hoping to find people that just like, oh, there's so many tracks, we don't even take them serious anymore. Those are the people I want to hang with, so I can just bring in 5,000 pounds worth of hydrocal and get busy.
Let us know who they are, please.
I would be glad to.
And welcome back to the show, everyone. This is the Journey Radio Show, and we are the She-Squatchers. Won't you check us out online at She-Squatchers.com, where you will find, we have an events page where you can find out where we're going to be coming up soon in just I think it's 4 weeks, or is it 3 weeks? We're supposed to be in Washington at Medline Falls Conference. So come check us out there if you can. I know that their general admission tickets have sold out, but they still have some VIP dinner tickets left that'll get you into the presentations as well. And it's a town-wide event, so the majority of the outside stuff is free. So come and meet us anyway, even if you can't get in the door. We will be outside with our booth and we'll be there. So come see us, say hi, take some pictures with us. We love that stuff. We love to meet you. And it's always a good time. So I hope we'll see you all there. We've got some other things in the mix that I'm not going to even talk about yet, but because they're up on down the road. So we'll have to see how that goes. And we'll talk more about that later. So Tammy would not be the same if I did not tell you to come and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to still make our numbers high. So please come subscribe to our YouTube channel at She-Squatchers Official. Like and follow our pages on Facebook and Instagram. So we're back with Dan Nedrelo. Thank you for joining us tonight, Dan.
You are sure welcome.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite encounter stories that you would like to share? And keep in mind that our listeners really are on to Dogman right now.
I guess they are. Yeah, I've got one of my interests, I guess, is just the obvious, simple things that happen that people experience, and then just, what can you do? I saw this, and I don't know if I'll ever see it again. There's a man in Floyd County, Iowa, and he asked me when I started talking to him, he said, "Do you know why people don't go catfishing the streams around here anymore?" And of course, I said, "I sure don't know." And he goes, "Because of the big black men that walk the streams at night." Then he went on to tell a story about how he and his sister were catfishing, and all of a sudden the dogs on the hill started lighting it up. And as this individual or somebody or something was coming down the stream, the dogs, the next farm would light it up, and then the dogs of the next farm would light it up. And all of a sudden, here comes this 8-foot tall, wide-shouldered individual, covered there, seen in the moonlight, walks out across the stream and just goes on into the next portion of the vegetation. Didn't miss a beat when he walked by these people. Of course, his sister would never go fishing again. He told me that when he was a little boy, his father called him and his brothers over to the sand pit where his father was working. And he said, "I want to show you something, just so you know." And what was it? Well, there was a fresh pond. And in the pond were frogs that were bitten off. So all you have are frog legs. All these frog legs are jerking. And the frogs are gone. So something grabbed the frogs by the legs, took a bite, and threw the legs back into the water. And they found out who was doing this because there was a set of big tracks and a couple of small tracks. They followed them, and they went literally up a hill, and it was very difficult climbing. They walked by a place where the sand was very loose and almost like quicksand, and this area was completely avoided. But anyway, that really set the stage for him there. That was just one of those little stories that really, really hit hard with me because I'm trying to imagine what these things look like. I'll give you another one real quick. A fellow from Minnesota, St. Louis County, of course, has got 20-some plus public reports there, and he had heard some howls and some vocalizations. He was a fur trapper. He would bring in all these furs, and then he would gut them, or literally skin them, rather, take the carcasses and put them over in the woods for bears or whatever animals decided they wanted that. Well, in this case, it was a different situation. The dogs went nuts. The sled dogs went nuts underneath the house. Every dog literally went underneath the house, something they never do. And in the morning, he went out to see what kind of disturbance he had. All the furs were fine. 3 carcasses were taken, all beaver, and grabbed and apparently eaten, because all that was left were the skeletons of these approximately 20-pound beaver. So he had like 60 pounds of beaver carcasses gone, and they were stacked like we'd stack trout. And there was, as I recall, an impression where it's like something big sat down to eat these. So that was an interesting behavior. As far as really incredible, fantastic reports go, I've got a few written down. I'm just going to glance at that real quick. I'll give you one a buddy of mine came up with, and he used to basically drive the Twinkie truck for our local Quick Trip stores here in southwestern Wisconsin. He ended up in Red Wing at 2 o'clock in the morning. He's on the main drag, and he's heading up Red Wing, and as he's going up, he happens to look over, and there's a figure along the road. And he's like, I don't know, it's a homeless guy, but he's a big guy. And up he goes, and he turns around, and he comes back because he's curious. It was covered with hair, and it was quite large. And he said, I can't even tell you how I felt. I just hit the accelerator and got out of there. I didn't finish the job. I just left. So that's interesting. In another case, we had, let's see. It was, there's a turkey hunter yeah, in one of the reports down in Iowa. That's real interesting. And he was basically he had the turkeys out, and he heard something walking. And he's sitting there hiding in the blind, and I think he's probably wearing a ghillie suit, and he's got a mask, literally, because he's turkey hunting. Well, this Sasquatch comes walking right down the valley and making a fair amount of noise. It gets real close to where he is and literally freezes. And again, looks right up and just stares at him eye to eye. And I don't remember the distance, but it was significant. And then he pulled out the 10 gauge and it dropped like it was going to take off like a sprinter on all fours, but it looked at him. And of course, he didn't pull the trigger, but he said, I almost did when it dropped. And he said, when it froze, it's like its hair changed and it literally became extremely difficult to see. And it did that several times. And then eventually it hunkered off and walked off and looked at him. And one of those situations where you're so uncomfortable, that's the last time you would go hunt in that valley. So those are interesting. I had a situation in Indiana where I interviewed 5 families, and I didn't get to see anything, but I got some wonderful stories. One with a pig that was picked up, and 250, 300-pound pig that was picked up out of the pen. And then the sound of the pig squealing goes all the way toward the forest. Meantime, Farmer Brown hops on the tractor, heads over that way. And then the animal's gone, or the pig is done screaming. Pig is gone. Okay, so that was interesting to see the expression on the face of the farmer that was sitting eating ice cream with his family as they sat and listened to this. In the meantime, he told me about skeleton stacks where he'd find deer carcasses, he'd find turtle shells, and they'd just literally be stacked. So that's interesting. Now, of that series of people, they continued to describe large, gray-haired individuals, big, wide shoulders that would come up out of the ravine and stare and watch the kids play frisbee or pass a football around. Now, the little girl who I first met, and I promised not to give out any names to the grandmother, basically told me she had a really nice friend, but he was very ugly, but he was very hairy, and he had a wonderful smile. And then she pointed to the front door, and she said, that's where we see his daddy. We call him the Bear Man. So that was interesting. Now, on leaving that group of people and hearing some of the recordings that they got, they had a 6-footer that would apparently come in once in a while and poke at the microphone and grunt and make some vocalizations. He, the neighbor that was into the mushrooms basically gave me a vocalization. And he said, the 2 of them went up to the field, and the local farmer harvested the soybeans. And so they were upset, and they came back upset, and they were hooting and hollering and really raising a lot of noise. And the one going up the hill, the other one stayed in the ravine. Apparently the sun was a little too bright, or he miscalculated, and he was upset. So they were going back and forth with loud vocalizations. And he imitated it for me. And I'm like, at this point, this was in 2002. And so I'm about ready to just, no, there's no way, I'm done with this. So I kind of gave it up and let it go. Well, about 8 months later, I'm in Cumberland, Wisconsin, working with some Native Americans, and the boyfriend told me about some experiences he had. And one of them was he was sitting with a nephew, and they were chopping wood, and all of a sudden they started hearing like a guttural talking. And it was really interesting because there was one near the tent in the edge of the woods, and there was one on the back of the field, and they would go back and forth. He unzipped the tent because he wanted to see this guy, and it went to a whistle. So all of a sudden he's got a whistle over here, and then he's got a returning whistle over here. Then they're gone. Well, I asked, what did it sound like? He imitated the vocalization. It was very samurai, and it sounded just like what the guy from Indiana repeated. And I can't do it specifically well, but I hooked up with the tribal police and that fellow, and we went and sat along the edge of a lake, just imitating it and recording ourselves as we tried to emulate this. And it's a little bit of the standard stuff, kind of a that type of thing. So, yeah. Those are a few that come to mind. One of the gal's sons had gone outside, probably for a smoke, and walked around the house, walked right into a giant male. And so he literally walked right into him and just got a kind of a grunt, because he was a big man. And the look, it's hard to get the detail in the dark. I'll just say that. But knowing some of the people that have, we've had another farmer up in north central Wisconsin, and he saw a man out in his field, and he's like, no, it's a bear. It's got to be a bear. Look at that. And he ended up hopping on the four-wheeler, driving all the way to the end of the field, and he was watching, and all of a sudden he saw hands that were going through the oats, and he was right on it with his four-wheeler. It stopped, turned around, and just stared at him. From what I understand, we have a lot of chimp-like faces in Wisconsin, and I know that we don't have that look across the board. We've got some that are very Neanderthal looking, particularly Ohio, according to some of the researchers I've talked to. And I know we've got some Native American looks, and then I know we've got some that are just maybe even undescribable, because they're the facial aspects that they have aren't necessarily symmetrical or even, or maybe that's recessive characters, or who knows. So inbreeding possible. Those are some that come to mind. I could take a question or two, or keep talking. Your call.
All right, Tammy, give your opportunity for a question, lady.
Well, I was going to say way back in the beginning when we were talking about how we think that Bigfoot might be calling and then bringing the coyotes up or the animals up to use for food. And my first thought was, hey, it's the siren of the cryptid world.
Yeah.
So that was my comment, but that was like a half an hour ago, so I just let it go.
It works. Reminds me of Stan Courtney's comments on the edge of Chicago. There is a like a cemetery there, but it's got structures, and sometimes there's a siren-like call that really doesn't have a source, and apparently it's movable. So certainly associated. I haven't been lucky enough to hear anything beyond that. I've heard whoops. I've heard in our recordings, we've got some talking, it seems like, but we can't discern the words. But I haven't got any of the fun stuff. I did get the Ohio screams, what I call scream roars from a distance, which also makes me wonder how many things are going on that our equipment doesn't pick up, So, I mean, we could have things around us that it just didn't get picked up. So.
Or what if it did and you just didn't hear it with your human ears that can't hear the frequencies that are going on?
That's a good point as well, And I'm not 20 anymore, so that even adds to that. So, yes. There's a, let me grab another good one here. I was working at a university, and I was, I had like a 17-foot reticulated python on one table and timber rattler on another, and it was a good group of kids, like sixth graders, and everything was going well, and we had a new zoologist there. She was from Colorado, and I just thought, what the heck, why not? So I asked her if she had any experiences or what she thought of the subject, and she said, I can't talk about that to many people, but I'll tell you. And she said when she was a little girl, she used to have a face look in her window, and they could never figure out why is there this path that leads to the river out from behind the house. And apparently she saw this face a number of times. She said it wasn't really scary, but it was scary because nobody knew what it was. And I'm not even sure if her parents believed her when she told them about it. So that's interesting. One of my favorite reports was Pacific Northwest, probably Alaska or close to it. And I believe it's in Maine Coast Sasquatch with Dr. Robert Alley. Anyway, J. Robert Alley. I think what was intriguing about it was two women with children shined their lights when they were at their camp, and there was a Sasquatch in a stream not far from the camp. And they thought, this isn't good. So they packed all their stuff up, but they weren't scared enough to leave, so they went all the way around the lake and put up there. Well, everything's great until about 2 hours later, this thing comes right down the trail and comes right into camp. The kids are sleeping. Mom one is like, do you see? Yes, I do. And it's like mom one and mom two are not saying anything. This thing comes in, it grabs an axe. And it picks the axe up and it's looking at it. And then it drops it and it drags it in the sand. And then it finally walks off dragging the axe. And they went and they retrieved it the next morning down by the beach. So, I mean, the incredible things that could happen or do happen. What I didn't say about one of the most intriguing things that happened to us in the Ozarks was, besides Shane seeing the close-up of that youngster, and he's seen numerous others too. So, but they came in the second night that I was there, and they went right down all the equipment in the table. And literally, the recording that Randy Harrington put in was amazing, because every item, you could, if it was metal, it sounded, you could hear the fingernails click on the metal. They got to the health bag, or, you know, the first aid kit, rather, unzipped it, zipped it, unzipped it, zipped it 18 times. You can count it. And they obviously like playing with a zipper. Now, so I'm guessing these are the juveniles, but we don't know. And then you could hear the cooler being shut. Well, you check the cooler, 6 appropriately monster cappuccinos were taken, and never once have the cans of those been seen. So Shane doesn't know where they went. So that's kind of interesting. So, but this project is going to take another step forward now that we're over the COVID situation, and we're all going to converge and see what we can come up with. So.
I think that Bigfoot would be the perfect spokesperson for monster drinks.
Well, exactly.
Could do like a whole cryptid collection.
Exactly.
That would be awesome.
Yes. And such nice, gentle nature for so many of them. So I'll let you jump in with any questions, or is there anything we can pull off the...
I did have a question about what you just said. You said they're nice, gentle nature. I hear gentle stories, and then I hear some not so gentle stories. And what do you think? I mean, why are so much of the different encounters? What do you think? What's going on there?
My take is, if they react with a gentle holler and yell and roar, that's enough to get most people leaving. Okay, but because they're so big, they resonate so much volume that it wouldn't take much to make a lot of people extremely nervous. Very few people that I know have been touched. Some have. I've got a friend at work who actually was in, I think it was Gunderson County, Colorado, and he was hunting coyotes. And one night he felt a hand on top of his head. He felt the fingers. Didn't feel the top of the hand, but the fingers. He passed out immediately. He woke up, he was fine, but he never hunted coyotes in that county again. I think the ones that really, really, really don't like us don't come anywhere near us. And that's a nice generalization without probably exceptions. There's a lot of them that probably don't care for us, that, you know, it's kind of the way of life because of our garbage that they can eat, because of our livestock that they can poach, things of that nature. But the ones that, there seems to be a tremendous number of claims that there are some around that are not causing any troubles. And I'll give you an example. The Tennessee study that I did in 2002 as well, we had feral cats there, and that's what they would take, but they wouldn't take the personalized cats that lived in the house that came out from time to time. That's interesting. We hear a lot of, there's controversy on them tying knots in horses' manes. And most people just completely reject that. But I'm looking at it from the standpoint of little chimpanzees looking for fun stuff to do. I don't think a big horse is going to be terrified of something that weighs 60, 80, 90, 150 pounds if it's reasonably behaved. And then as this grows, there can easily be an association with that particular horse, which of course may well last another decade or two. As far as playing with the manes, that takes nimble fingers. Who's got nimble fingers? The youngsters. So they could easily be doing things like that. Obviously, the giants don't have time to braid, probably. But again, we're all individuals, and we have, in our case, we have artists, we have, mechanics, we have construction workers, and we have teachers. Are they as varied? Do we have a 46-year-old male sitting in a ravine that can hear, according to Stan Courtney, maybe 6 times better than we can? And so he sits in the ravine and is entertained by the family goings on the television. And if that little 4-year-old human is saying amazing things, how about this guy? I mean, if the gorilla could sign 1,000 words, and this guy's got the possible anatomy to say them, we've got plenty of reports of them talking. So are they? Need more verification, but nothing surprises me anymore. So as far as Dogman goes, that surprises me.
Well, tell us what surprises you about Dogman.
Well, it just doesn't seem possible because you're looking at a canine that behaves like an ape in many cases, looks like a dog, stands up, more wolf or German Shepherd. That's a hard one for me to swallow, but the problem is there's so many detailed information, so many detailed things that continue to be repeated coming from many different sources that the anecdotal information is really strong. And there seems to be some footprints that look like they have a chance to be legit. And the more people you talk to, the stronger this becomes. Now, it's interesting that most of the witnesses are fine, so the aggression claims kind of go back to a window of, we like to be scared and we'll pay money for it. So I know that some people with the podcast and things of that nature probably are not. They're probably being very careful which reports they go with. In other words, go with an interesting, fun one and scary one rather than, well, nothing happened, but I looked at it type, So it's going to be interesting to see in the future how the videos and how the game cams and how all these things continue on this subject. But it's certainly very, very popular.
Say, can I ask a quick question? Oh, shoot.
No, Jenna, you cannot. You waited too long. So we just have like a minute left of the show. I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell everyone how they can reach you if you'd like to be reached.
Okay, I have a Facebook that is Dana, D-A-N-A, Nedrelo. That's my cryptozoology exchange. And if you Google me, you can find me as well. That's kind of like my website, I guess, because I've been doing this a while. You hit that or Dana and Nedrelo. If you go to any of the Bigfoot groups, you're going to see my name somewhere because I'm in virtually all of them. And I'm looking to network and communicate with as many human beings as I can find. And if you don't do Sasquatch or Dogman, I'm still interested, especially if you're a photographer or biologist or interested in a naturalist or citizen scientist or just interested in cool stuff that makes good pictures. So there you go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for joining us tonight. We hope you'll come back again and share more stories with us another time. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. And we will have a guest next week talking about the PG film, the Patterson-Gimlin film. And if you have questions that you'd like to know specifically about that, please message them to me in advance. Our guest would like them in writing before the show. So please let me know if you have specific questions about that Patterson-Gimlin film for next week. Thanks so much, everyone, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you.